So here it is. Arrived a few days ago in two 50-pound boxes. Could have been packed a little better, but could also be a lot worse. The box of records seems to be in great shape. Sadly, nothing was really fastened into the enclosure quite properly. The turntable mechanism itself was only held on by one screw. So it looks like there's a post missing here. I'll need to address. It was shipped with a stack of records, which does not make me happy because that means probably all of these records are ruined. But the bigger problem is that the needle itself, or needles plural, because there's one on the top and one on the bottom. Let's see if I can get in there without ruining it. That was not locked into position at all, so that was flapping around, and there were a couple records on top of the counterweight the whole time. So I'm assuming that the needles themselves are pretty much screwed. I'm going to try and get a close-up picture of them so I can determine whether or not I should even try testing this out before replacing those. It looks like replacements are pretty hard to find as well. From some internal pictures I found of the power supply, it looks like it is a tubeless power supply. There are a couple of paper caps. There's one here, obviously, and there's another one inside. I suspect there's also a secondary transformer on the inside. I suspect that these are external components for outputting to other speakers, and the ones inside are meant to play to the internal speaker, which is conveniently missing from this model. It's supposed to be mounted on the inside. I think it's maybe an 8-inch speaker. Kind of looks like a generic paper cone car speaker. So I'll have to hook something up to that if I want to test it. It's in better shape than I expected. There's no rust anywhere that I can see except on a couple of the fasteners. The back of the power supply actually seems the dirtiest. Like it was exposed to mice or something. I'm not quite sure. All the connectors and everything are still there on the inside of the unit itself. The motor, or the turntable spindle drive, whatever, does spin, so I don't think that's seized up. I haven't had a chance to flip it over. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do that or if I should be doing that, but I need to check to see if there are any broken gears or bent pieces. Decided to start with some initial vacuuming out of the enclosure, and I took the door off, which is in pretty good shape overall from the exterior. Some of the chrome is let's tap the chrome so it focuses better. Needs a little polishing, but could be worse. I'm very hesitant to run a vacuum in here. I think I've grabbed all of the screws and bolts and fasteners that have come loose and are just rattling around in here, but it does look like a mouse or mice have made a home in here at some point. Otherwise, this is surprisingly simple. Like I said, no rust, it's just dirty. Ignore everything I said about this thing being pretty clean inside. Ugh. What years of cruft am I cleaning off here? Where did this accumulate from? Why is that important? What do you think, Derp? Is it gonna work? Derp! Is it gonna work? Definitely seen better days, but unfortunately, this power supply uses a strange sort of custom connector, so the cord itself is pretty thick. I don't see any obvious nicks in it. Who knows how long the zip tie's been on it, but maybe if nothing else I can cut the plug end off and put a new one on. Gross. So I'd like to point out right now that I don't have a service manual for the Seeburg yet. I don't know exactly what's in the power supply. I don't know how long the device has been sitting. I don't know if it was broken before it was packed up and shipped to me. So there's a lot of question marks, and I fully acknowledge that what I'm about to do is not recommended or blessed by the great jukebox gods, but the curiosity is killing me, and this is a rare item, but it's not a rare enough item that I can't get replacement parts or fix it if needed. So here we go. Here's what we've got. I've cleaned the power cord, made sure the connectors are, there's a good chance that they'll make some sort of connection. I will plug them into a surge protector of dubious origin or quality, but it, got a switch on it, so maybe it'll stop the house from catching fire. I've made all of the connections. This controls power for the motor, and I believe there may be a couple other motors involved. This controls a solenoid, I believe, for the track or record rejection switch. And since I don't have a speaker with the device, I've plugged it into this port on the side here. I think this is what you would plug the internal speaker to, and it also has a plug for it. So there's a separate amplifier that may be involved in that external piece. So this may not work at all, but there's another RCA output on the back that I might try if that doesn't work. And just a throwaway, crappy old PC speaker that, if it explodes, I don't really care. I took a quick look underneath. Everything still seems to spin. I don't see anything horribly out of place, but again, this could go really poorly. And that's not a happy noise. It looks like the drive motor is spinning. That's probably not good. Uh-oh. Okay. So that's probably not great. I didn't have the unit powered on either, so that's interesting. Let's try turning it on. Okay. So we've got nothing on the arm. Oh. Gear spinning. This bottom platform's supposed to be spinning too. Nope, it's free spinning, which is not great. Let's try track reject. Ugh. Oh dear. Okay, poked around a little bit more to see if something was stuck or out of place. I'm pretty sure that noise that I'm hearing is a motor disconnect mechanism. So there's two pieces. Well, I'll just put a picture in here because it's easier to explain than it's easier to show a picture than try to explain it. So that's not great. I'll probably need to replace that. There's a bunch of rubber components. But if you'll notice, it's in a different position than it was before. The arm is back in its home position, and all the records are down. I was fiddling with actually this. This is the arm that will lift all of the records back to the top when it's done. That seemed to trigger the bottom turntable spinning, which was interesting. And then I switched it off, And you saw me switching it on and off a few times to no effect. But I let it complete some sort of mechanical movement, and it's off now. So all the records are at the bottom. It's still powered on. Let's see what happens when I switch it on. Actually, nothing's going to happen because all of the records are down. But let's see. I'm assuming it has now realized that all the records are down and it needs to lift them up. Nope. Holy shit. Okay, so it's doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing, except that the arm is misaligned. It should be playing the underside of the record right now. I've sort of given up on all the records in this platter, and I've also kind of given up on the needle. I don't think that that's in functional shape, so I'm going to ease it back in to where it should be. Alright, so I've been playing around with this for a little while now. Still not able to get any audio output on either the internal speaker or the high Z outputs on the back. I did a voltage test on the on both of the speaker outputs, and I was getting a voltage signal. Don't know if that means anything. I also considered that perhaps the speaker came with its own separate amplifier, so the signal coming out of there may only be a preamp signal, so I hooked up an amplifier and a different speaker. No difference on any of the outputs. So my big issues right now are the motor coupling, the needles, and obviously the fact that there's no sound output. So my next step is probably going to be to crack open this big bad boy and see what he's doing wrong. Also just going to hit this with some Goo Gone because it's fucking gross. Be clean. 5 screws on this side, 2 on the bottom, and another 4 on the other side. And then this bottom piece just sort of pops off. Yeah, no real scorch marks. Ooh, that could be some capacitor goo. We'll have to see where that lines up with on the innards. No rust, which is, always a good sign. And I'm be precarious about putting this upside down. And the inside of this looks different from the picture that I've seen. The picture had a separate transformer and a separate paper capacitor on the inside. None of that here. Maybe I'm missing it, but I'm not seeing any capacitors that... I'm seeing a lot of drop... what do they call them? The orange type capacitors. Dumont. Interesting. It's a different type of capacitor that I'm used to seeing when I open this up, when I open these things up. Still sort of that, rat's nest configuration. There's no circuit board. Everything's just sort of wired together. But I'm also not seeing any obvious signs of anything wrong, which is not encouraging. Maybe my next step will be to just deoxide all of the potentiometers on the front panel. Found the culprit of the black goo tar stuff on the metal enclosure cover. Just some tape. First signs of some crusty capacitors. This is part of a larger board on the front. Not sure what the rest of this circuit does. But that potentiometer to the right there, well, the one all the way buried in the corner that you can barely see is the volume, main volume, and then the other one is external input volume. Alright, well, I tried fiddling around with as many obvious things as I could, and I'm not getting any sound output, so I'm going to call it a day for now. I think the noise might just be a motor alignment problem. It looks like the motor itself is suspended on these on this rubberized platform. The rubber seems to be in pretty good shape as well. I know a lot of these units the rubber goes bad, but these rubber pads here. So this is the mounting bracket where it mounts to the inside of the console. It's locked down, but I think it's supposed to float because this side does that as well, and that's, you know, obviously that needs to be cleaned up, but I think the rubber and the spring are in good shape. So overall, yeah, I think it's in better condition overall than I thought. And the more that I look at the internals of the power supply, the more I realize that recapping this is going to be a pain in the ass because there are a lot of really tiny capacitors in some odd places. I may not need to replace all of them, but you know, at a minimum, you know, let's get a metal object and start pointing inside. All of the ones that look like this will need to be replaced. Those kind, I don't think I'll need to replace the drops, again, whatever they're called, the weird looking ones. Obviously that giant Mallory paper cap on the outside is going to have to go. And I think, just judging by where the phono, the cartridge input is, I think that this board, we'll call it, is the preamp. Could be wrong, but again, I don't have the service manual yet. I need to acquire that and look at a schematic before I can make any real determination here. So that's all for now.
Hey, look at me. I'm going to be the bane of your existence until you find a replacement.